Hey guys, today we're in the book of First Chronicles chapter 27. David has been getting everything ready for the temple. He's now organized the materials, the Levites, the priests, the musicians, the gatekeepers, and now today the military and the leaders of all of Israel. And so we see here in verse 1, in the number of the people of Israel, the heads of fathers' houses, commanders of thousands and hundreds, and their officers who serve the king in all matters concerning the divisions that came and went month after month throughout the year, each division numbering 24,000. A couple of things to be said here. The chronicler is telling us some things that we know is already true. Israel has always defended itself. Unlike almost any other nation that Israel has gone up against, they would use slaves and mercenaries to fight their wars and help in their battles. Israel has never done that. Israel has always depended on its men to defend itself. And that's what it means. They've served the king in all matters. Israel has always stepped up and they do that. And they do that today as well. But notice where it says month after month. What does that mean? Well, the next 15 verses are going to give some context to this month after month. Just as David has organized the priests, the musicians, the gatekeepers, the Levites, the leaders, all these people, he's organized the military. How did he do it? He organized the military into 12 units. Okay, into 12 units. Every unit had 24,000 men in that unit. And what he did was basically unit number 1, you look after all of Israel during January. Unit number 2, you looked after Israel in February, in March, in April, in May. And so what happens is he has a military of all these men, but these men really only serve 1 month a year. So you might kind of think of it in our standard today. He created what we would call a reserved army. And so they work 1 month a year, and in that month they would spread out all over Israel. Now, of course, that is the time in which they are on post. So, for example, if you were up in the north, in let's say in the Galilee region, and you had orders to go to south to the Jerusalem, well, it would take you about a week to get there. So you would have to leave a week before your post. You would man your post for the month, and then you would take a week for you to come home, right? So you might spend up to 6 weeks. But these are people all around Israel, right? So hopefully they would be put on post near their house, if that makes sense. And it shows you the thought in the concept of how great David really was. I mean, it's an ingenious idea. Nobody has ever done this before. No civilization has done this before. But here's Israel fighting for themselves, no mercenaries, no wasting of money. And instead of having soldiers that were on call all year long, they were 1 month a year. Now, of course, if a battle broke out, they would be called up. Much like today, a reserve, if we go to war, even though it's not their week or their weekend, they're called to war, right? And so just kind of that reserve idea just shows us kind of how smart David was. And so verses 2 through 15 just give context in who that was. And you can see who's in charge of the first month, the second month, the third month, the fourth month, and so forth, right? So kind of gives context. Starting in verse 16, it gives us the leaders of the tribes. These are not priests. These are not military generals. This is what we would call civil service people. These are the administrators of the government. These are people who are good, who are smart, who are wise, and David called them to help Israel, to serve in the government and help do that. And you get a big, long list of those. 16 through 22. Then in 23, we get this kind of unique verse. says that David did not count those below the 20 years of age, for the Lord had promised to make Israel as many of the stars of heaven. Remember, he counted the Levites, but he says he's not going to count those who are 20 and under. Why? What happened the last time that David counted people, right? You remember that? David made a census and God punished him for it, and it brought on 3 days of famine, and over 700,000 people, 70,000 people were destroyed, right? Because kings were told not to give a census, because once you count them, they are deemed as yours. And so David has learned from his mistake, and he said, I'm not going to count the people under 20. I needed to count for military reason, but I'm not counting everybody. I'm not going there. So we see that he's learned his lesson, and that's why it says, and the Lord had promised to him to make Israel many of the stars of heaven. He's trusting God. He didn't count to say, how many do I have? He's counting on God. He's trusting on God that says God will provide the military as it's coming up. He'll provide the people that I need. Just showing that David, at the end of his life, has learned his lesson. Not over that, but in 25, starting in verse 25, David now appoints people over everything. Once again, these are these leaders, these civil service. But notice what he points. He points people over the treasuries. This is the banks, right? But then it says treasuries in the country. This is what we would call as like surplus, grocery stores, storehouses. He points people over tilling the soil, vineyards, produce, olive trees, sycamore trees, over oil, over herds that are pastured in the mountains and herds that are pastured in the valleys, over camels, over donkeys, and over flocks. He creates this huge ag department. And he has all of these people because why? Because no matter how great Jerusalem is, no matter how great the temple is, no matter how great the priests are, or the Levites are, or the musicians are, or the military is, or the leaders are, and Israel as a country, no matter how great they are, if they can't eat, they will die. Doesn't matter how great they are. And so David is putting everything into this organization structure so that when Solomon, it comes up and he's king and he spends a great deal of years building the house for the Lord, he doesn't have to worry about what a king normally has to worry about. He doesn't have to worry about feast and famine and organization and wars and this and that. David is putting out this huge blueprint so that Israel will continue to run, so that Solomon can be focused on building the house of the Lord. He's setting his son up to do well, but he's setting his son up to focus on the Lord entirely. And that's the most important thing that you need to walk away from these chapters. David is a great man. He's a great organizer. He did all of this, but he did all this for the singular focus of focusing on God. The new David that will come will do everything to set focus on the Lord. And that's exactly what Jesus did. Jesus came to not put focus on Jesus, even though he is God incarnate, but he was always about his Father's will. It was always about his Father's purpose. It was never about the signs. It was never about the miracles. It was always about the sign maker, the miracle worker. Jesus was always pointing to God. And that's exactly what David is doing. He's organizing everything so that everything will be focused toward the Lord. Hope that makes a little bit more sense. And we will see you tomorrow in chapter 28. God bless.